Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Kelly Halderman. Welcome to our weekly Wednesday Zoom call. So I am going to be your host today. Dr. Connors is away, and he asked me to step in today and do a presentation on the NRF2 pathway and sulforaphane. So it's going to be really exciting. This is a really, really cool nutrient. It has a ton of research behind it, and the research really knocked our socks off and got us thinking. So we wanted to do a Zoom call on this particular nutrient. So before we get started, a Zoom question came in yesterday, and it's a really great question. And it is, can you describe the pros and cons of surgery and biopsies when you have cancer? And I discussed this with the staff, and we think that this is such a great question that we want to do an additional piece on it and have its own time devoted to this question, because it may be one that a lot of people have and we should actually spend some time on. So we are on the case. We are going to get a presentation or even maybe next week's Zoom call devoted to this question of describing the pros and cons of surgeries and biopsies when you have cancer. So stay tuned for that. So over here, I have a chat section. So if anyone's having problems hearing me, or if you have any questions that can't wait to the end, you can definitely chat me over here and I can answer those questions. But this presentation is going to be pretty short and sweet and to the point, and then I'm going to open it up for some additional questions on this. So let me make this nice and big. Okay, so the NRF2 pathway and sulforaphane, an important pathway in cancer and its potent inducer. So the NRF2 pathway is getting really popular these days, and it has a lot of implications, not only in anti-aging, but definitely in cancer. It's one of the most important biological pathways in the human body. It has importance in, like I said, cancer, aging, inflammation, and detoxification. So it's so cool that it's been called the pathway of the fountain of youth, the cancer protecting pathway, and the master detox pathway. So again, just a ton of research is being poured into this pathway. And when we talk about pathways, we're talking about biological reactions that are happening on a second-by-second basis in basically every single one of your cells. And we know from listening to Dr. Connors talk about pathways and biochemistry and genetics that genetics does play an important role on how well those pathways work. And we are always looking at these pathways in terms of cancer. And it's really exciting news that I wanted to present to you that we are going to be teaming up with the Nutrigenetic Research Institute, and we're going to be doing some research ourselves on genetics and cancer. So we're going to be digging even deeper. But this pathway, the NRF2 pathway, is super important in cancer. So if you've had your genetics done, we've already taken a look at this pathway. So what is this NRF2 pathway? It's basically a pathway that ensures that you are activating your survival genes, the genes that keep us alive. Basically, we're looking at this pathway from an importance of detoxification in this toxic world, and we're looking at this pathway and protecting us from oxidative stress. And oxidative stress is basically the imbalance between free radical production from a zillion different things and our antioxidant production. So I like this pathway. I like this depiction right here. So anything that you see in green is the gene. And if we've listened to Dr. Connors, we know all about what genes are. They're instructions to make proteins and enzymes. And what's important in this particular depiction is that we have this big whopping red pink area of oxidative stress. So the NRF2 is the gene that is responsible for, let's just say, activating the NRF2 pathway or making the NRF2 pathway, the enzymes that push this. So when our body senses the oxidative stress, it will enact, it'll say, hey, okay, the NRF2, the NRF2 will wake up and turn on, and it's actually a transcription factor, which is kind of high level, biochemistry, but what it does is it goes down to the DNA and it tells the DNA, hey, we got some problems here. Our house is on fire. We need to call in the fire department. We need to get some antioxidants going. So the NRF2 will interact with that antioxidant response element, and that's just on your DNA. And again, it's just telling it, okay, we got problems. We have to put out the fire. So what that does is activate glutathione transcription. So it's almost like the NRF2 pathway is the master regulator for the master detoxer. So it says, okay, let's speed up our production of glutathione. And that, again, is so important in detoxification and keeping our cells in our body as healthy. And it also activates another pathway over here on the left. It activates the NQO1 pathway, and that is detoxification. So our whole point of this is that we have oxidative stress and we need to detox out. So that's simplistic terms, but that's where the NRF2 pathway in the environment we live in, it is very, very important that our NRF2 pathway is optimized. NRF2 has its implications specifically in tumor suppressor protein and glutathione. So interestingly, it interacts with other important cell regulators, such as that tumor suppressor protein 53 and nuclear factor kappa beta, so NF kappa beta. And those are really important in cancer. And this pathway has been called the guardian of health because it can protect against many age-related diseases. And it also activates, which we said on the last slide, it activates that glutamate cysteine ligase, which is involved in glutathione synthesis. So keeping this pathway going in every one of your cells, super important. So luckily, God gave us a wonderful compound that super upregulates the NRF, the NRF2 pathway, and that is called isothiocyanate. And what that does is just goes in and just turns that puppy on. So it is cranking out all kinds of antioxidants and making sure that our DNA is protected, making sure there's a balance between the free radicals are being scavenged by the antioxidants. So isothiocyanate is the name of that. That compound is found in cruciferous vegetables. So thank you, God. And the greatest amount is found in broccoli sprouts, cauliflower, cabbage, and kale. So broccoli sprouts are the number one, the most potent. And you can see here, there's a picture of some broccoli sprouts. And a typical quart jar of broccoli sprouts, it contains around 90 to 120 milligrams of the active form of the isothiocyanate. And the active form is actually called sulforaphane. So that's that fancy name of the whole presentation is sulforaphane. That's the compound. So really interestingly, again, is that the enzyme that converts isothiocyanate to sulforaphane, it's activated by chewing and crushing, but it's inactivated by boiling and cooking. So I eat a lot of broccoli, and before I started doing the research, I used to steam my broccoli. Now I've decided that I probably should implement in a little bit more of the raw stuff because I'm pretty much inactivating the potent NRF2 pathway inducer. So it's all about balance though. So, and again, so if you want to make broccoli sprouts, you're going to get about 90 to 120 milligrams of sulforaphane. So sulforaphane has anti-cancer properties, and the number one, and we're going to go through these. So number one is that it prevents deactivation of phase 1 biotransformation enzymes. So what those enzymes are responsible for doing is taking pro-carcinogens into carcinogens. So you can see how deactivating this would not be a good thing, that we'd want this definitely to be working. And the number two thing that it does, it can activate phase 2 detoxification enzymes. And we definitely want those working in cancer. We want them working in even a perfectly young child. We want those working really well. It has increased expression in that NQO1 gene, and that, again, translates down to really good detoxification. And it prevents the degradation of the tumor suppressor protein P53. So I thought this was super interesting because the literature says that over 50% of adult cancers have a broken or mutated P53. So looking at sulforaphane in cancer patients is extremely important, and we're going to take a look at a little bit of the research in a second here. And lastly, sulforaphane can prevent DNA adducts, which is a type of DNA damage known to lead to cancer. DNA adducts are very prevalent in people with a history of smoking. So I'm going to show you some studies that are going to knock your socks off too. Okay, so we all know that our veggies are good for us, and that, you know, our parents probably told us eat your veggies a million times, but when you're looking at the research, it would say the same thing, that there's a decreased cancer risk in those who consume healthy amounts of cruciferous vegetables on a regular basis. You can look that up and take that one to the bank. Definitely, there are a lot of studies, not just in cancer, but a lot of other diseases too, that really benefit from those who just had always been consuming these cruciferous vegetables. So in 2010, a study was done on smokers who consumed 4.5 servings of raw cruciferous vegetables per month, and they were shown to have a 55% reduction in lung cancer. 55% reduction, and that's not a whole lot of servings there. So definitely, in talking about those DNA adducts and how sulforaphane can really help lessen the damage of that, that's super cool. The next one, so multiple studies have shown that women who have consumed cruciferous vegetables at least once a week had between a 17 and 50% reduction in breast cancer for those consuming it every day. So I think this was from a meta-analysis, so a big study that looked at other little studies, so it has a lot of power to it. The next one, in a study where men with prostate were giving 60 milligrams of sulforaphane daily, and that's approximately 140 grams of fresh broccoli sprouts. And again, that's about that quart. If you did your own broccoli sprouts, if you grew your own broccoli sprouts, that's somewhere about half of that would give you that amount of sulforaphane. But the results showed a slowing of the doubling rate of PSA by 80%. Compared to placebo. It's like, wow, okay, so this is a big deal. And these are just a couple of the studies that I pulled. There's a lot more, but I really thought these were really good. And then finally, a study in those with bladder cancer demonstrated that consuming 4 servings of raw cruciferous vegetables per month decreased bladder cancer mortality by 57% compared with those who only consumed 1 serving. So we're not looking at a ton of consumption either with these studies. I was looking at, well, is this realistic? I mean, are they feeding, they did a lot of animal studies as well. And I'm looking at, well, what was the servings? Did they basically have to eat, 7 pounds of the cruciferous vegetables per day? And really they didn't. It was a modest amount, and definitely something that's doable. But what's even cooler is that the Connors Clinic has come out with their own formulation, and it is called BroccoClear. It contains 60 milligrams per cap of the sulforaphane, and that is a lot. That's actually the most that there is on the market at this point. So it's very, very potent. It's easier than sprouting your own broccoli sprouts, but I'm not against that. I think that's fine if you want to do that. And we've been having people start on this, and I just recently started on it as well. We're just really excited because look at all the research that is behind it. And not only is there research on cancer, guys, there's research on sulforaphane and depression and anxiety, sulforaphane and hormonal regulation, sulforaphane and ADHD and other brain neurological conditions. It's exploding. So the NRF2 pathway research is exploding, and so is the sulforaphane. And these two go together really well. And even in those people who have no genetic defects in the NRF2 pathway, I really believe that the environment we live in, I mean, why wouldn't we want to upregulate this pathway? It seems that even in those who don't have anything going on per se, that this would be a really nice addition. And so what we've also come up with, because we can't stop ourselves here, we just have to do better and learn more and figure things out to help you guys and to help optimize what we're doing here. So we came up with a delivery system, so a new delivery system where we're looking at using the portal cable anastomosis system. And I'm actually writing an article for Cancer Tutor right now on this pathway. So it's an anastomosis, and it's basically the delivery system is using your rectal mucosa instead of oral. And now don't hang up on me too soon now. So what we're looking at is doing just a more of a retention, not an enema per se, and we're using different equipment with it because the rectal mucosa, first of all, when we're in this environment where our food is contaminated and the things that we eat, our gut, it takes a beating, and the absorption, sometimes it's not as good as we want it, and we know that our gut is the foundation of health. So we really want to have, we obviously we always pay attention to that. So looking at the rectal mucosa, it has the ability to absorb some of these nutrients, and it can actually, in this paper that I'm putting out, this article, it actually has a higher bioavailability compared to oral when you're looking at delivery of this. And it also, when you're using the rectal route, you're bypassing 2/3 of the first pass metabolism, as the rectum's venous drainage is 2/3 systemic and 1/3 hepatic. So basically what that means is that the substance and nutrient will reach the circulatory system with significantly less alteration and in greater concentrations. So that's really cool, because we really want, not only are we looking at the delivery, we're looking at, are you absorbing it? Is it getting to where it needs to go? So a new delivery system, be on the lookout. We're going to be testing this and looking at putting some of our patients on this instead. So that concludes the actual presentation, the PowerPoint. So I'm going to open it up for questions. I'm going to unmute everybody. Okay. So if anyone has a question, why don't we just go for it, and we'll have a dialogue.
For the new delivery system,
Mm-hmm.
if somebody had a colostomy, does that mean it wouldn't work?
No, actually it would work really well. So we're looking at using rectal catheters and people who already have those in place, and having people who have different sorts of catheters, feeding tubes we're looking at. So that would actually be, that would be appropriate. Good question.
And just on the side, I don't know if you know, but what about for coffee enemas? Does the coffee enema depend on the colon being attached, like connected?
That's a really good question. I believe the coffee enema, the effectiveness is through the rectal mucosa. So I would think that it would be, I don't think you'd get the same response. That's what I would think. You would have to use the rectal mucosa to get into that like portal system. So we can check with Dr. Connors too.
Dr. Kelly, I'm assuming that if you use this, you would do your coffee enema first.
Correct. Absolutely. Yes. And so that's a really good point too, is that if you're going to be doing a coupling with a coffee enema, you want to do that first and make sure it flushes out. And this is going to be more of a very small retention, where you're not necessarily even going to notice anything coming back out per se. We want it at a very small amount so that you're not causing, when the rectum has that dilatation, it immediately will want to defecate. So basically we're trying to keep it to a minimum.
Are you saying using the rectal delivery system, it's going to be better even than taking the BroccoClear capsules? Is that what you're saying?
The literature. So we're looking up in the literature, and it's showing that there's a higher bioavailability, as well as we're bypassing that first pass. So when you're taking something via the gut, so orally, it has to go through, it has to basically be processed, and it has to check out with all your immune cells that line the gut, in that the stomach area and the small intestine area. And so we're looking at, if the delivery is so much better in the rectum, we're looking at, okay, well, which one are we going to get better absorption with? And it's looking like it's not a hard, fast rule by any means. We can still definitely take orally the BroccoClear and get a really good effect. We're just looking at, couldn't we do it better? and can we do it more efficiently?
So would you, as a case-by-case basis, look at our profile and decide whether it's a therapy that you recommend for us?
Yes.
Or is it just, okay.
Yes.
Okay. And then you would be looking down through our genetic workup, making those recommendations.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking through the NRF2 and making sure that that's optimized, and seeing if you have a predisposition for that pathway not to work. That would be an important addition to it. I don't personally, after researching this for a couple weeks, I don't see any downsides per se to using it. I'm a minimalist, so I don't like to use a ton of supplements, but I'm seeing so much robust scientific research behind this that it's hard for me to look at even a person with perfect the NRF2 pathway genes. Let's just say they have perfect detoxification. It really, if they'd say, Dr. Halderman, is this something that I shouldn't take? I would not say no. I would definitely think that then you just look at the studies, or just encourage, you're just knowing that these cruciferous vegetables and how to eat them raw, or doing broccoli sprouts, just kind of looking at that as it's extremely helpful. You don't have to go full blown doing the retention enemas with this, but we're just looking at how can we do this better, and how can we facilitate this, because we know that sulforaphane's activation, if you take sulforaphane orally, it can be, there was a study done where you can assay a breast tumor cell, I believe, and it had the sulforaphane in it an hour later. So, and we're looking at, okay, well, what would be the difference? What is the positives and the negatives to this type of delivery? So it's again, it's not a one size fits all, but sulforaphane in of itself might be that one size fits everyone because of the studies.
What if you had leaky gut?
Yeah.
Would it be cause of autoimmune disease against it or anything like that?
So the leaky gut is the situation where I definitely would want to be aggressive and use the rectal veins. I'd want to use the rectal administration, because I don't want to chance it that they're not absorbing. And I'm going to publish on the Facebook page probably in the next 2 days my original article on the novel nutraceutical delivery system that I'm talking about. And it does talk about that, in that we have to, the gut is the foundation of health. A lot of people who have cancer, unfortunately, have gut issues too. We just don't walk around with cancer. We have other issues as well, like high cholesterol and, hypertension. So if you have that, that would make me more inclined to say, hey, let's do this rectally, if that makes sense.
Can you overdo, I grow broccoli sprouts, I grow kale. We either eat it in salads or smoothies. And I also take NRF2 accelerator. Can you get too much of this?
I think that you can get too much of it. I think that that zone, if you listen to my my talk on the Goldilocks area under the bell curve, where that's where your body wants to be. It's called your hormetic zone. And basically there's a hormetic zone for everything, for the amount of zinc in your body, for the amount of glutathione in your body. So for sulforaphane and for, let's say, the sulfur groups, there's a window, there's a Goldilocks zone. It's probably pretty wide. Could you overdose on it? I suppose. I really wouldn't. I would gauge yourself. So let's say that you're doing what you're doing, and then you add in, let's say you're going to add in 1 oral BroccoClear per day, and you notice something, that could be your body signaling you that, hey, I had enough.
Okay.
Now, do you have the product to use in the enema now?
We do.
Okay. So it's a liquid, or?
Yeah, so it's a suspension. So basically you just mix it yourself, and You can draw it up, and then you can just reuse the drawing syringe you can use, but you can't reuse the tubing per se. So we're trying to look at the most environmentally friendly way of doing this. And from that standpoint, we're kind of tinkering around with a couple different, we're in the beta testing stages of the actual equipment and delivery, but you could use basically anything really for the delivery.
So is there an applicator on the end of that tube, or are we just missing part of the picture?
This one right here, the one that I just highlighted. Are you still seeing my screen? So no, so that'll just be inserted right up into the rectum. It's very small. It's extremely small. And then you can just push the syringe up. And it's flexible, so it shouldn't cause any damage or anything.
If you're sensitive to sulfur, is this related to the transferation pathway also or not?
So that's a really good question too. So looking at the transsulfuration pathway, it's really in its infancy on looking at if you have CBS upregulation or downregulation. And so what I really tend to do with people is I do trial and error. We know the positive effects of the sulforaphane. We know that there's people like myself, there's a threshold of sulfur that my body can handle, but that's usually in the form of N-acetylcysteine or other things, like if you take a lot of glutathione. So that's a really good question. And what I would say is, again, it's a trial and error. You may take this and have, let's say you have sulfur issues. If you take this, but your body needs it so badly to upregulate that pathway that it is just blowing through, it's just chewing through it, and you don't even notice, if that makes sense, because you're utilizing it as opposed to the other forms of sulfur usually go down the transsulfuration pathway in order to make the end product glutathione. So this is kind of a different backdoor-ish approach where remember on this depiction right here, so the NRF2 pathway, so we're stimulating it, and then we're making the glutathione on our own, which is, I really highly favor pushing the pathway instead of giving the end product. It just seems more of a godly way of doing things, is to just help propagate the pathway that God already gave us instead of giving the endpoint. So again, I would rather have someone taking the sulforaphane, pushing this pathway, doing this all naturally, than loading up on a bunch of glutathione or N-acetylcysteine. So you can always post questions, specific ones on the Facebook page. If you have a question like, okay, I'm going to try this, or I tried this, I can definitely give you some feedback with that. Great question though.
So if you have like allergies to the lily family, the onions and the garlic and all those, this would be a different pathway to go through.
Yep, you could give it a try and see if I mean, you kind of get an idea of when you're sulfur overloaded. There's also test strips that I employ. I use them. They're on Amazon. You can get sulfur test strips to see if your sulfates and your sulfites are high. So, if you start taking this and you notice you're having a symptom, but you check those and you're fine, it could be for something else. So I don't necessarily like to shoot in the dark. So I like a lot of testing strips like that. Now, I will tell you that I am extremely sensitive to sulfur things. I have to limit them. I started taking 120 milligrams of the sulforaphane and have yet to have any problems, because I really think that, like I said, I think the body is doing with it what it needs to do, and it's chewing through it so that it's not building up, if that makes sense.
Okay. How do you use test strips? How do you use those?
You just urinate on them first morning urine.
Okay, thank you.
I can post a link to those test strips on Facebook page.
Okay.
Great questions, you guys.
This is a little kind of side off the subject, but like when I keep hearing about antioxidants, like I thought oxygen is good for your body. So what is it about oxidants that, is a negative when it has oxy in it as an oxygen?
So antioxidants are good. So free radicals, which are generated from the toxins, environment. Free radicals are generated just normal process of our body's functions. So those, when that free radical, like it goes around the body and it hurts stuff. Like it runs into the cell membrane and it damages the cell membrane, and it runs into your DNA and it damages your DNA. So what an antioxidant does is it comes in and it donates an electron, so then the free radical is neutralized, so then it can no longer cause damage. Does that make sense?
Yes, but I mean, a free radical, I'm trying to picture what it actually is. Is it?
So it's just I would say it's something that does cellular damage. So it's just think of it as a substance that goes around the body, and when
So it's like a liquid, or like, I mean, you know, what kind of form does it take?
Probably more if you think of it like a biochemical compound, like if you think of like glutathione, how it has that biochemical structure, or like vitamin C, you know how they have like those, it's like a ring and it's got some carbons and hydrogens and things like that. Like it just has this, it has this free radical. The free definition of that free radical is that it's just reactive. It's like explosive. It's like going around and knocking things down, and everything it touches, it's hurting. So then the antioxidant comes in and it neutralizes it. It hands them another electron, because 2 electrons together do not cause damage. So it's not really a liquid per se, but more of like a compound in your cells.
So your body kind of produces that as a result of toxins. It's like a
Yep.
byproduct of toxins.
Yeah, and it's actually, free radicals are a byproduct of just being alive, just breathing and eating food. So in some of the free radicals our bodies produce actually protect us from pathogens. So it's all about balance. It really is. It's not like we want to eradicate every free radical in our body, and it's not like we want to dump into our body a ton of antioxidants. We want a really nice balance.
What are you doing today?
Any other questions?
Order this online then?
Yes, you can order it online.
And there's instructions on the catheter kit on how to use that?
There will be, yes, definitely. There'll be instructions with it. We'll mail a sheet out too on how to deliver it. And then we're looking at, you know, if you have colon cancers or things that are in the localized area, it's going to be even more appropriate. Or if you have, again, leaky gut. So if you're not sure, just post on the Facebook page and we can answer that for you. And again, I've been using the rectal form because I don't want to take a chance. I want it to be delivered, and I don't want I don't want my gut getting in the way of that. So that's what I do.
So I take it this is okay to experiment with?
Yeah, absolutely. And
So
a side effect of the experimentation could be that you're happier and your hair grows.
okay, so we're safe in experimenting with it.
Yeah.
Can't hurt ourselves?
I don't think so. I don't want you taking the whole bottle, but you know, so let's just kind of back up to those studies. In that study in prostate cancer, the men were given 60 milligrams per day, and that had a really positive response. So again, thinking about that hormetic zone, that Goldilocks zone, each one of these capsules has 60 milligrams in it. So you really wouldn't want to do 4 or 5. I mean, I don't think there'd be a whole lot of, the zone is probably somewhere around 1 or 2, I would say.
So you're experimenting with men there, so women would be less, wouldn't it?
Not necessarily, because we're looking at genetics, we're looking at absorption, and men versus women on absorption. There's probably no difference, but I guess a weight-based assessment, that could come into play. But I think just in general, around 1 to 2 caps per day, and just see.
You're putting that product into the syringe, diluting it and put it in syringe and using it that way.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So I'll link that article on how, on what our thought process is on using the rectal veins and bypassing the stomach, so you can kind of have a reference too, because it has higher bioavailability. And if we're looking at cancer, we want to double, triple check. And I will say this is that I'm going to be doing a Zoom call on the time restricted eating, and that's basically where we're eating in a window of about around 7 hours. And what that gives our body a chance to do is heal our gut, make sure our liver gets a break. And when you're looking at, if you're doing the time restricted eating, and there's a link to the article on the Facebook page, it's really hard sometimes to get your supplements in. So using the rectal delivery actually complements that. And I put that in the article that I'll be posting. If that doesn't make sense yet, I'll post it in there, and kind of our thought process on why we're coupling the two together. Okay, guys, do you have any other questions? I'm going to wrap it up here. And okay, so next week, Dr. Connors will be back, and I'm sure he will have a very exciting topic to talk to us about and answer some of the questions. In the meantime, again, look for all the stuff I talked about to be posted on the Facebook page, and also the Zoom question that was that came in last night about the pros and cons of surgery and biopsies when you have cancer. We're going to be addressing that as well. So thank you guys for tuning in, and it was a pleasure, and I will see you guys later. Thanks.
Are you the doctor that's opening the Florida office?
I am. That is me. So this is my 4th year with the Connors Clinic. So it's time for us to fly south.
So then sometimes we can make a vacation out of our appointments. Right?
You sure can. You sure can. We'd love
Not
to
that
see
we
you down
can't
there.
vacation in Minneapolis, but
Right. Have a good imagination when you come up here in January. But yeah, we're really excited. We're in the early stages right now, but hopefully we're opening it up this summer, and keep on praying for us. And we're just excited that we're expanding. So
get a lot of flood insurance.
yeah, right. I know. We're looking inland. So, all right, guys. Well, thank you. It's
Thank
been
you.
a pleasure. Okay, talk to you later. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good job, Dr. Kelly.
Thanks.
Oh, she's gonna.